Many many wonderful people who make their living off of things that aren't just drawing pages and putting them on the internet. We've got like a little bit of a slide here with some questions. We'll use those as jumping off points for greater discussion. And then at the end, we'll have a Q&A where folks in the Zoom can throw questions in, and we'll talk about different things. If there are things that we wanted to cover earlier, we can also do that then. So let's get started so that you all can talk about yourselves. So who do I have with me today? I have Kel, I have Hye, I have Kevin. Kel, would you like to go first and talk a little bit about yourself?
I'm Kel McDonald. I make comics you can read at kelmcdonald.com. For the purposes of this panel, I am a managing editor at Iron Circus, and I am a regular editor at Seven Seas, the manga publisher. Was editing, my editing started in like 2011 because when I started the comic anthology Cautionary Fables and Fairy Tales and sort of expanded out from there.
And then dearest Hye.
Hello, hello. So yes, I am Hye Mardikian. I work primarily as a pre-press manager, book designer, and for primarily for Iron Circus, and I also take various freelance contracts and clients as well. I range anywhere from primarily, as said, pre-press management and book design, production manager as well, print coordinator, and various other Swiss Army editorial services that I might be able to offer. So, it's pocket necessities and such.
Yeah, if it involves InDesign, you
Yes.
probably do it.
There we go.
And then Kevin.
Hi, my name is Kevin, and I'm a designer, artist, and currently like figuring out what else I'll be adding to an explanation like this. I've been in webcomics for a bit, and I'm pretty excited for this panel. To follow the format that Hye and Kel have said is to go more like down the list of things I've done. It's often website related. So it ends up being like developing websites for individual creators. It ends up being like helping publishers with their own like website and identity, and helping them with like, migrating their store from one platform to another, like a lot of like technical kind of work. And I've been doing it for probably about 10 years now, somewhere around there. But I've worked all over the place. I can get into that later.
And I forgot to ask, Hye and Kel, how long have you also been doing your respective fields?
I mean, I said editorial 2011.
Oh, okay. I can't
Yeah,
count.
when I was doing my intro. So I'll leave other people to do the math.
Yeah.
I've been working in the comic space, I'd say, like as a freelancer, taking individual contractors since about 2016, 2017. And then from there, I was hired on for a full, like almost full-time position in mid 2022. So ever since then, it had just been kind of building up towards, taking on more and more individual clients before I got it finally with a publisher. So
yeah. So you've all been in this for quite a while.
yeah.
So since you've all been in this for quite a while, let's go more into exactly what it is that you kind of do. Kind of in layman's terms, like let's go with you first, Kel. When you say editorial, or you say managing editor, what would that mean to someone who isn't necessarily familiar with books or how publishing works?
So in a movie that I liked as a teenager, Dangerous Lives of Altar Boys, there's a bit where someone asks, "What does an editor do?" And the character replies with, "The editor tells you if you suck or not." And well, you suck. And that does sort of sum it up. I give feedback on writing and story elements, both that's where most editors focus on, because a lot of people who get into editing, their background is in writing. And I do know several editors that they're not as equipped to talk about art, but I do give feedback on art too. And then for managing editorial, I am overseeing that the trains run on time, and make sure that like stuff is turned into the right place, uploaded to the correct, make sure we have everything that we need. All the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. It's herding cats. That's what managing editorial does.
Yeah.
So
there's more than just like correcting a spelling mistake.
that is proofreading. That's copy editing. And I'm very bad at proofreading. So I have never been a copy editor. I'm not good at it. I'm better at like, well, to reinforce this theme in your story, you might want to consider having this happen, or changing this facial expression to push this emotion further, or like maybe consider using a different angle, and this balloon placement isn't flowing well. You might want to like move this balloon to here and this one here.
So
most common feedback I give is you're putting too much dialogue in your panel. Everyone's going to get crushed by the words.
You need to leave space to breathe.
Yep.
So relatedly, what is it that you find that people seem to think that it is that you do?
Um,
And I'll go through this for everybody, but
I feel like most people know that editors are supposed to give you feedback.
yeah.
And it's more people don't quite know what managing editor does, where that is harder to like quantify because when it's getting run correctly, um, people don't notice it. Whereas if someone isn't making sure that all the things got put in the right place, it can turn into a shit show very quick.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yep.
Hi.
Well,
So what it is that you do for maybe people that aren't super familiar with how books are made?
so most of the time, when it comes to pre-press work, at least in my experience, everything that you see that is not either the artwork or dialogue directly is what I have a hand in laying out. And this can even be something from as small as laying out a page in an InDesign spread or individual page, as well as book design, if that's something that the client also requires. So, for instance, that includes everything from the inner title page, the way that credits are aligned on a spine, the backside of a book's cover. All that has to be designed by somebody, and that is something that, depending on what the client needs to be done, is done by me. Sometimes I will receive books that are in various states of assembly or asset havings and such, like this. The difference between somebody having simply a text of black back blurb, and that's my responsibility to input it, or if I need to come up with the entire design of it, uh, but they also are still working on the tip. So it honestly varies depending on
Hmm.
the state of each job that I am given. Um, I also manage everything from discussing various print stocks with printers, whatever said printer is more specialized in. I have multiple relationships with multiple different printers, just to ensure you're not putting all your eggs in one printer's basket. There's certainly
Yeah.
some printers that are able to technologically and on the manufacturing line able to do some things that others are not in varying qualities or just capabilities.
Yeah.
So yeah, book design, image treatment as well. That's another thing that depends on what the book state is in when I receive it. Either preparation, art cleanup as well is another thing. So for
Oh.
instance, if I receive a you know PSD and RGB that has text on the actual PSD document, but
Mm.
their printer requires that I both clean up the piece, layer compression, various like file cleanups, or just text realignment. That is also something I've been
Mm.
needing to do. Uh, and also working with the artist too to see what they want to have done on their book. It's a
Yeah.
very close collaborative process in that, and that can be either in the draft revision process, the proofreader process, because I'm also certain books I'm the one also inputting the proofreading. So it's a like I hinted at earlier, it's a Swiss Army knife of a job,
Yeah.
and
It's kind
I
of like for if the cartoonist is the painter, you are the framer.
yes, because no matter
Yeah.
how gorgeous of a piece you might have, something like the Mona Lisa, if you put it in a frame that looks like garbage,
It's gonna be, yeah, it's gonna be sad.
it's going to take away from your whole experience of viewing the piece, because you're like, that's a beautiful piece of art. That's a shame
Yeah.
that it's in that, or that you weren't able to bring it to the fullest fruition that it could have been.
Yeah, yeah. Or in the
So
case of like a lot of self-pub work, there isn't a lot of thought put into design, not necessarily out of active neglect, but out of
no,
just like not knowing that there are certain things to pay attention to.
yeah, not knowing. And then also sometimes, unfortunately, we all live in a world where it's companies hiring less people, not out of a faith in their skill sometimes, but it's because they don't want to pay somebody else to be the one who was assembling the book. Or you say you are the one taking the time to create the art and the comic, whatever book. We will pass this off to someone who can design the book for you, so you're not also having to do all these other things. So it's
No,
like that
yeah.
is, it's not of a lack of faith that you couldn't do this. It's like, this is my job. and your job is to create and write whatever it might be that you're putting into the book.
Yeah. So when you talk to people for the first time, what do they tend to think that you do?
You
Because I know
know,
there's a lot of misconceptions about what it is that you do specifically.
I mean this in the utmost sincerity and curiosity. I really wish that I knew what people had an idea of what I do when I
Mhm.
say that, because I have been emailed in certain relayed messages with in terms or reference that make it sound far more simplistic than what I do. And I just
Mhm.
I there's times I'm like, what do you think I do? But like out of genuine curiosity, like I want to know what people understand, like the process that is
Yeah.
involved
Well, what are
with
what are some of those questions that people ask you to give
um
people kind of a clue?
oh gosh, like, oh, so how long does it take to do a batch conversion,
Yeah.
of like files, or like
Yeah.
how
Which is turning files from RGB to print ready. Okay.
EMYK
Yeah.
compatible processes, or like just, I you know what too, I hate bringing back the it depends quarter counter jar from a previous panel that I did for NIF. But it just truly depends on the book that I receive too,
Mm-hmm.
what the book itself requires, needs work on, whether it
Mm-hmm.
just be, you know just inputting the pages to send them to a printer, or organizing something with a printer,
Yeah.
or I need to do a complete treatment with the book. It genuinely varies what the person
Okay.
asks me, or it's like, oh, how long does it take to input the text or something, or
Yeah.
how long does the InDesign document take to finish? So
Yeah.
I
Okay.
it truly
It
depends
depends.
on. I know, I hate that's the golden phrase now for pre-press people apparently, but it just depends what their familiarity is
Yeah.
too with the medium as well. I've noticed they have
Mm.
different um levels of questioning, so
Yeah.
I've heard all
Okay.
sorts of
Huh.
questions.
So Kevin,
Yeah.
what do you do in layman's terms? Because not a lot of people I think know exactly what a web designer
Oh
does.
yeah. Yeah, and that term even is really interesting because like it's not very common in the industry. I feel like I felt a lot of similarity to what you were talking about, High, in that like I kind of sometimes feel like a keeper of a puddle that is actually a lake. In terms of like when someone asks a question, there's always this part of my brain that goes like, okay, do you want the full answer? Because I don't know if you have like 20 minutes.
Yeah,
Um,
that's true.
so like an easy explanation, like I would say I'm a designer, but the easy explanation is that I do websites. And so if you ask me this at a party and you seem kind of bored, I would say that I help take a comic style and apply it to the webcomic website itself. So I try to take a little bit of the magic that you do, High, when it comes to books, and like apply it to a website framework.
Yeah.
But there's this interesting interplay that happens where like a lot of creators that I know, a lot of artists know how to use a book, and there's a difference there when it comes to like, do they know how to use a website, do they know how to maintain it? And a lot of people know how to maintain a book, which is to not throw it in the fire. But like in order to maintain a website, you kind of have to like regularly keep it up like a bike.
Yeah.
And so there's this balance that happens there of like, how complex is the website and how like wild do we want it to be, and how much do I believe that on a random Tuesday when they're late and haven't eaten, do they want to mess around with website stuff? And so I try to like balance those things together.
Mhm.
um to go into a little bit more detail though, like I said, I started around 2015, and at this point I think I've helped design and launch somewhere around 150 websites for comics,
Wow.
of all different kinds.
Haven't
Uh,
built my website.
yep,
Yeah.
I have done Kel's website. I've been working with like a lot of that came from working with Hiveworks Comics since 2016, and I'm currently a tech lead over there. But I have done work outside of Hiveworks, assisting with comics like Wondermark, or and publishers like Iron Circus Comics. And that job, to get a little bit more detailed, like like other people here were talking about, is like I'll do things like I do research to make sure it's possible. Like most things are possible, but how hard is it to keep it possible in the future? I work with other freelancers to accomplish like very weird tasks that are highly specialized that like I could feasibly do, but I don't want to do like a really bad job and be paid a lot of money to do a bad job. I also on the graphic design end, which is why I call myself a designer, is I will take your Photoshop file, rename all your layers that you don't name, and trim the 3 white pixels you forgot about around your character's like left eye, and so that it's actually transparent. I'll also take a lot of your files and vectorize them, which is a term to mean that rather than using pixels like individual little squares, it's made where the browser draws it, and therefore it can be like zoomed out really far or zoomed in really close, and it has basically the same quality. Where with a pixelized image, if you zoom in really far, it'll get blurry, which sometimes can be fun if that's like an effect you want, but most artists freak out. They don't want that.
Yeah, I imagine that's pretty important for like logos for like the header.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something where like there's a thing that can happen where during the process, depending on how you're looking at the website, you can think that that's how everyone's going to look at it. But then you go to your friend's house who has like way too wild of a monitor, and then you see your character just like blown up like really hard, and then you go, oh God. So there's a lot of testing that I'll do in terms of like making sure that like something looks good in different ways. There's a reason why my phone is tiny, is because I picked my phone based on the most common phone size across like the world. So that if I look at your website, I'm seeing it in the way that most people tend to. And that keeps me from accidentally making your site for just like a person who knows too much about tech. Which might not be your audience. You know, sometimes it could be. But like I'll do a lot of that sort of stuff. I'll do troubleshooting, which means like double checking my own code, because like something that's weird about websites is like you can put a period somewhere and it can make your website crash, but really it's just like something broke because I put a comma somewhere I shouldn't have. And I'll do a lot of the intimidating things for you, such as like helping you with domain stuff, which is like very scary for a lot of people who don't do tech things. And like help you set up some systems and things like that.
Yeah. So what do you when you're talking to someone about getting like their website set up for the first time, like getting their webcomic set up, what do you find that they seem to think you do?
Everything. like
An internet god.
Yeah, they kind of, it's weird that like I think because in like making comics and making artwork and people have like a passion for publishing, I think that people will know things like an editor. And I've met a lot of artists who like, hi, what you do is highly specialized and really important. And I feel like I could talk them into like figuring out where you work or like kind of what you're doing. And with tech stuff, I've more often like my title at Highworks is tech, which like for the tech industry is they're like, what does that mean? That's like our entire industry. We have like 20 people across 20 different jobs. And I just do every tech thing. So like sometimes that's fun because I get allowed to touch some things that I never be able to get allowed to touch in another industry, like another job. But there can be a like can you make me a Twitter kind of vibe like with people, and I'm like, I am sorry to inform you, I can't.
That's the same phenomenon as when they say, oh, you're a graphic designer. One person says, can you draw me a poster, versus, okay, can you make me a logo batch? And it's like,
yes,
I am gonna be better at one of those things than the other.
Oh, absolutely. And you like, you don't want to say no because it might make you seem like you're bad at your job when really like you're good at there's many different jobs, like sub jobs in what you're doing.
Yeah. So as a general like kind of roundtable question to all three of you, was this kind of job, this space you occupy, was that something you specifically looked for, or was it something that like someone else encouraged you to do? Was it just kind of like a natural evolution of your interests? I'm curious.
I'm good at being organized and no one else is.
You are very organized is the thing. I
Yes.
see this firsthand.
Yes.
I also manage the table for me and some friends, and I am in charge of the table because if anyone else is in charge of the table, I'm going to pester them. Did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? Um, and it's going to annoy them, and it's also going to frustrate me if they don't answer me.
Mm,
So it's less of it's a passion of mine and more for everyone's sanity, and it's just better if I organize it.
just let me do it.
Yeah. Um so like yeah, it's like, what do you mean you didn't pay this thing on time? And what do you mean this thing that I told you that was announced that we need by this date you haven't done yet? Like, so it's sort of less passion, and I fell into it because I was good at it.
That makes sense.
And then as far as edit, so that's the managing part. The editorial part is I really like talking about stories and dissecting them.
Mm,
Um, Kevin and I go running every Friday, and that's mostly what we talk about. It's
Yeah.
like, did you see this thing, and how does this work in a story? So when I'm giving feedback on a story, it's usually like holistically big picture things about the story rather
mm,
than um tiny bits and pieces.
mm. That makes sense. How about you, Hye?
I Yes. Okay. So much like the general umbrella term that is graphic design that was spoken about
Yeah.
earlier, I knew that I wanted to do something related to that, but not specifically what. I initially my first brush with a job actually started off as an internship when I was still high junior, for a dude that did a lot of artistic, like aesthetic lining posters for a local like hotel. And I was taken on to clean up his pieces. If anybody remembers the tool Macromedia Freehand, so
The old
I
days.
had yeah, really, the Adobe Illustrator's
Rip.
old grandpa who would take you down into the basement and show you all the cool movies that your parents didn't let you watch. um but I did a lot of cleanup for that, so I knew I enjoyed design and laying out things and cleaning stuff up in terms of like organization, and that I knew I enjoyed. But it was really when I went to Academy of Art University
Mm,
for 3 semesters total. That from there, I'm thankful to have very good professors who were able to be like, refine me and convince me. It's like you don't need to percolate yourself into such a wide, if you know that you're good about something, really refine that. And
mm.
from there I got really into like the history of printmaking, of like different just layout, information layout
Mm.
and such. And then from there I really wanted to like further refine and design books. I got started on a couple like volunteer organizational art projects, and my first graphic novel commission was for the old webcomic, if anybody remembers Wasted Talent. So
I do.
I
I'm
yeah,
ancient.
you were there.
I was
So
there
I
in the
assembled the
old
first
days.
two books from there, and I enjoyed what I saw and just kind of got further deeper into it.
Yeah.
So
And you were doing fan anthologies, and you had
yes.
a card game, right?
Yeah, that was the first like real tester to like see if I could handle the wide assortment of
Mm.
things that pre-press can entail, like text editing, email correspondence with your clients or contributors to it. It was the first one was 50 plus artists, and the second one was just under 50. So it was a definitely a good, like, testing the waters, like, okay, you enjoy this job, you're gonna handle the most extreme brunt of it
Yeah.
before you get into further work of it. So
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah.
just kind of fell from, like, I started off at the bigger idea of design works, and then
Yeah.
had
Knowing you
some.
like a thing and then kind of seeing where your
Yes.
interests fit into the ecosystem.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
as you know, pre-press peoples can kind of be a small community in comics too. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
very thankful to the people who either reached out to me or like understood like, hey, I'm starting out on these projects. I'm not. It's not like, oh, I'm going into this without any sort of background, but like you are my first, for example, like you're my first like black and white comic that I'm doing, or you're my
Yeah.
first anthology that I'm working from there, and it's great having people that were willing to work with you as much as you were being entrusted with their print wares and stuff. And
Yeah.
I think they turned out pretty good.
I
So
think you do pretty good. How about you, Kevin?
I
Because
think
you
that
used to
there's
also draw web comics, right? Or
yeah, I
still
think
do.
it started with I was working on a comic that I made called Titanzer, and inspired by things like Thunderpaw and like Problem Sleuth, I made a like animated GIF comic. And I was using this website management program called WordPress at the time. And while I was tinkering with it, I discovered that I liked learning. I liked being curious and poking around with things and sort of getting a sense of things. And I also discovered that like my bar for knowing things and like being good at things was like up here. And a lot of people's was like way down here in terms of what they needed. Like I
Hmm.
only need to know like how do I install WordPress or how do I do this thing. And I liked working with other people and helping them like a lot.
Hmm.
I realized that like, oh, it feels really good to just tell someone how to install WordPress, or giving someone some random like 5 minutes of time that really helps them with something that is incredibly frustrating. I think like something that's been interesting about my journey is that like sometimes it can be that you're really good at something that's really hard. And sometimes you can be so good at something that you think it's easy, but it's actually really hard for most people. And something that I would say is like a lot of people that I've encountered, when they deal with technology, it frustrates them on such like a soul deep level that like it makes them like really, really mad. And I for some reason have this ability to just like, they imagine technology as this like frustrating like brick wall that they're trying to get over. And I, based on how much I understand technology and I've watched it be made and seen how hard it is to do, I mostly see it as like a very confused little Roomba that's like sweating the whole time.
Yeah.
Because we've like tricked sand into thinking. So like I imagine when you're like, can you do this thing? It's like sweating and like, I don't know, can I? And I'm like trying to like pat it and like go like, it's okay, buddy. Um, and that has made it so that I've been able to do like, I've done a lot of tech support in my history. I used to work for the University of Central Michigan, and I would go to different like faculty and help them with their tech issues. I would help students with issues. So I've had a lot of experience like taking a technological problem that where the experts there usually come up with their own jargon and how to say things, and like work through their problems and then translate that to other people who
Hmm.
don't have that jargon in their head or anything like that.
Yeah.
And that is weirdly a really crucial skill for what I do in terms of like you would think that what I'm the most proud of, and I am proud of this, but you think that I'm the most proud of is like the biggest website I've ever made or the most complex website. And really the thing I'm most proud of is like coming up with a really good way to explain domains to people, because domains are incredibly complex. Um, and going like, oh, it's like your phone number on your phone. And then seeing someone go click, oh, I know what you're talking about. Rather than giving them like a 20-minute explanation where you see their eyes glaze over and they're like in another dimension and you have to like pull them back into reality. Um, like that part of it has been really rewarding. So like I wouldn't say that I came in looking to do this, but I found a lot of satisfying things in the process that has made it really easy for me to keep doing it.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, it's interesting that you kind of got into it for like helping people and not necessarily because you're like, I'm besties with WordPress and I want to make all of the plugins ever.
Oh no, no. And it's like it's weird because with technology, it's kind of like you're a lot of people think when they're coming in that what
Hmm.
you're doing is solving a problem for them. Like when when you work on something, Kel, when you work on something, that project is like done and gone, even though they have the books. Like the books are still there, but
yeah,
they're not maintaining that relationship
yeah,
forever in a way.
very different.
With me, I'm kind of like a dating service where I'm like setting them up with someone. And I've had clients where I'm like, oh, you'd be a really bad match for WordPress. Like
Ooh.
you two would have a very toxic relationship.
Hmm.
And so I have to like think on that sort of way because they are going to continue to interact with this thing past the point of the project being like done.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Huh.
Hmm.
So related to this and kind of all three of your journeys, how is what you're doing now? How does it compare to how things felt when you were like beginning in this? And I know like a lot of this is kind of like you kind of ended up doing something because you were good at it or because nobody else would. But when you started to say call yourself an editor or call yourself a pre-press manager, how has things changed since you started doing that officially? And we can start with Hye this time. Switch it up.
How has it changed? I think I'm noticing there being a bell curve now of like the inverse of like as I get more and more experience like
Hmm.
with various InDesign uh aspects and like print tech, like there's the old thing of nobody's ever finished learning. We
Yeah.
are all on a constant learning process in our own mediums, and if you ever think that you fully conquered your own, you are perilously wrong, in my
Yeah.
opinion. But as I preface what I'm about to say with that, because I'm starting to realize it's like people are drawing comics in newer and amazing ways that we have not seen before in a digital medium or even print medium sometimes. But as a result of that, because people are able to do more stuff, there is more unknown to them in the print process because either this technology or managing it is new. And
Mm-hmm.
I have to use both my old skills that I've been able to refine over the years of doing various books and pre-press work and try to now figure out this not even problem, but just uh new, I wouldn't say even situation either,
Mm.
just a new form of like printed matter, like trying to do the alchemy of taking this thing on a digital medium and
Yeah.
applying the real world literal chemistry and design layout of it onto a physical printed matter.
Yeah.
It's
Like I'm
even.
sure back in you said it was 2016 when you first got
Yep.
started that you probably did not think you'd have to consider how do I turn this scrolling comic into a book?
I was literally going to be using that as an
Yeah.
example, as in a sense of, showing where both the artist and publisher had a very hard awakening of, oh, this is going to take a lot of work, isn't it?
Yeah,
Because,
it takes work.
yeah, because it's creating a page layout as well. And, even we know as comic artists, the thumbnailing and paneling process, the layout of, you know, the
The
work of
flow is important.
flow is
Yeah.
very
It's
important.
going to be
And
distinctly different.
yeah, so that is an entire thing that they didn't even consider, where it's on top
Yeah.
of, text translation onto like uh off of a PSD file onto another medium. It's also I'm designing an entire comic page,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's definitely something I know. Even like the recent boom in risograph printing. Uh,
Yeah,
you
Rezo's
know,
back, baby.
yeah, so that's been a whole translation, like, the
Yeah.
differences between both it and screen printing, what overlaps, what doesn't,
Yeah.
even new technologies too. I'm in a process of learning things versus like the artists might be learning something that they were not aware of for the first time. Like,
Yeah. So a
everybody,
lot more learning than you initially thought. A
yes,
lot more upkeep. I can see that. Yeah.
yeah, it's almost a reverse of what Kevin was discussing earlier about how
Hmm.
you're taking a static medium of a comic or something that has been etched onto a page of a comic and into a living breathing format of a website, where it's somehow it's the opposite of that, where I'm taking the dynamic version of a thing that is still in a you know pre-physical state and
Hmm.
applying both a constant coming out of sciences of how the print industry and technology is evolving
Yeah.
versus what is physically possible on paper. And no, I don't care how much you try to sell me up on this hemp paper stock. I know that a rich black Inca text is not going to look as good as it would normally. Sorry, not worth the extra money, actually.
God.
So it's a very much a, you know, the ever stay humble medium of press, because sometimes you can think you do a really good job on those proofs, and then you get them in the mail and you're like, oh no, why are all my colors
why does this look
off?
bad? No.
Why does it look bad, actually? And then you got to go back and, you know, work. So it's
Constant learning.
constant.
Yeah. Okay. So Kel, especially on like the editorial end of things, how do you feel about how things are now compared to what you thought it would be like in the beginning?
I feel like that not that much has changed because
Mm.
stories are still good or bad.
Yeah.
And so it's just I've gotten more of the work, so
Mm.
it's just a balancing act of
Yeah.
more things to do, rather than fundamentally changing.
Yeah. Has the
The
way that you kind of interact with creators changed, like when giving editorial feedback?
No, not really.
Okay.
I do know that I do know like when someone and I are probably a bad fit.
Mm-mm.
Is I'm better at giving feedback if there's a script.
Mm-mm.
And a lot of people are like, especially if they're used to drawing webcomics, they want to draw a page at a time. And since I want to do a holistic approach, I
Yeah.
can't tell you if this early scene needs more foreshadowing if I don't know the end.
Yeah.
Um,
You need to see the whole thing from
and
above.
Yeah.
because I draw, I feel bad if I tell someone to redraw a thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So I have noticed that if someone wants to jump right into drawing and doesn't want to write a script,
Mm.
I have a harder time giving feedback because um well, you already drew 100 pages,
Mm.
and now on page 102, I realize you should have put this thing on page 5.
Yeah, yeah.
And that would have been easier to catch if you sent me a script of the whole thing.
Yeah, yeah.
But I understand that you don't like to write scripts.
Yeah. It is interesting how I feel like especially in kind of the American comic space and like the UK comic space is writing a script used to be very like kind of required. Not so much in
Well,
like
not
other mediums, but or
not
areas.
necessarily, because there is also the Marvel method,
Hmm.
which was the writer writes a summary, and then
Yeah.
the artist draws pages, and then the writer decides on the dialogue afterwards.
That sounds like an awful
Um,
method, honestly.
yeah,
It sounds like a nightmare.
that sounds like unless you and the artist are 1,000% on the same page, it's a bad
Yeah.
idea.
Unless you both are drift compatible or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
So Kevin, the same question for you. How are things now compared to like when you first started doing this?
Well, like I mean, at the very, very beginning, I thought that I approach things in such a flexible way that and I over explained a lot. I would send these like really long emails to artists about like, here's all your options, here's what's going on. Because I couldn't really gauge, especially over email, like how invested they were or how much explanation they needed in order to feel
Hmm.
comfortable, because I always wanted to like empower them to make decisions.
Yeah.
And working with artists, I thought that like I thought my problem was going to be they wanted to make their website look like a hot dog, and I needed to help them know that their website needed to be navigatable.
Mhm.
But that's not the case. It's actually like more the opposite of like a lot of times, like I've heard the word minimal like too
Mhm.
much in my life at this stage. Of like, I just want a minimal website, and I have
Especially for
no
web
idea
design,
what
I
that
can
means
imagine.
anymore. What did you say? Hi, sorry.
Oh, sorry, just for web design too, I can imagine with like design trends and everything.
Oh yeah. And like there's speaking of what you're saying, Hi, there's also like on the other side, because I'm sort of in between two spaces. On the other side, in the design, like web design, web development world, things are constantly moving and changing. And it takes like a certain kind of skill that I've tried to develop over time to understand, what is this change? Is this change actually applicable to what I do? Will it help artists? Or is it going to like waste their time? Because there's a lot of changes that have happened that are like really nice if you're building like a platform, like, you're trying to build like a Twitter, or you're trying to build like, some bigger thing. But if you apply that to a one person website, it's going to be a huge waste of their time. It's going to take way too much time for them to maintain it and stuff.
Yeah.
So like, I thought that was going to be the issue, when really like, I need to figure out how to take some of that information and apply it to what's going on. And also that, like, I would say at the very beginning, just having a website was hard. Like, getting a website set up, paying me to just make you a website was like, cool, I did it. And now I feel like there's enough tools and things out there that I find that I'm finding I'm helping people more when I talk about, like, I'll call it like their ecosystem, or I'm trying to find like a more normal term for it. Of like, how does this all fit into your stuff? Because if I come back and I've built you a site for like $500, $1,000, whatever, and then I see like that you could have just used a link tree, or that even if you had a link tree, you wouldn't update your link tree, which, by the way, I do notice if someone hasn't updated their link tree, and I get really annoyed.
Me too.
It's 4 links, buddy. But like, it's that shows that there's an issue there. Like, I've made a joke before that I should have a service where I hire a bear to chase you until you update your portfolio on your website. Because like that can be a real struggle. And so trying to talk through with someone, like, what are you struggling with? What are you trying to accomplish with this website? That's been a lot more of what I find I'm doing now, rather than like, how do I architect this like perfect battle station that we can use to destroy the enemy, kind of thing.
Interesting. I still think you should do the bear service.
That'd be fun.
I do have ideas that are not literally hiring a bear, but like, it's something I've thought about because it is such a real problem.
Yeah.
And it points to a real issue that people are experiencing. And it's not because people are lazy. It's because like something is happening there.
Yeah.
And that's interesting to me as a designer.
Yeah, usually it's especially with internet things, it's some level of burnout or exhaustion.
Yeah. Well,
or other things that you're just too busy to be able to handle.
I personally, I came up with this idea talking with an artist about it. I think there should be a CMS, and we know someone who does a webcomic CMS on Nero. I was going to bug them about this, that what they should do is you should have your own unique login while you're on your phone, and you can Tinder style swipe left or right on your artwork to have it added into your portfolio.
Oh,
okay.
That would be fun.
Because then while you're just messing around in the grocery store line, rather than you wasting your life over in TikTok, you can like do your own portfolio stuff in like 3 seconds.
Yeah. That's smart, honestly. We should talk more about that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that, it came from the real problem, which is I don't want to look through all my artwork and it makes me go into an existential spiral.
Yeah.
But how can I go sort through all of my crap artwork like really quickly?
Yeah, usually I just dump everything in a folder and delete until I feel
that's a way to do
good.
it. That's a way to do it. It works, but like for some people, that might help too. Anyways,
yeah. So okay, it's interesting hearing all of your perspectives, especially as it relates to like comics work. And so we know overall that like the comics industry is super notorious for like low pay. But I'm also curious, how does what you all do now compare to the non-comics area of your industry, both in pay and general workload? Because I know I used to have a position as a kind of catch-all graphic design, web development guy at like a legal administration firm. And that was awful, and I never want to work in non-comic spaces for web ever again. Oh, it was a nightmare.
Oh, sorry.
So let's actually start with you, Kevin.
Well, I did a little bit of research to make sure I knew what I was talking about. I'm definitely making lower than I was if I was working with a company. Just like a standard like design company, like agency or whatever. Those typically end up being, there's a couple different ways it could show up. And I'll talk about two of the more prominent ones that I know of. One is like an agency, which is where they find clients that need work done, and they'll like negotiate a contract with them and figure out like, you know, what kind of scope is this? What people do you need for the thing? Stuff like that. And then there's also, they'll employ people who do web design or front end development is what they often call it, for like building a what they call a platform, which is like a larger piece of technology that uses the internet in different ways. And both of those, I'm definitely getting paid less than I would be there. I also do a lot of freelance work outside of what I do with Hiveworks. So sometimes things fall together, so I end up earning more than it looks like a lot, but it's because I got a couple of freelance gigs, and also my work at Hiveworks was not like breaking me. I think the highest I earned in a year was somewhere around 50K. Between freelance and my contract position with Hiveworks. But I barely did anything other than work that year. I just like all I did was work.
Yeah, which is miserable.
Yes, absolutely. I was not able to maintain that pace. But I'd say my average is between like 30 and 40K, but it like fluctuates a lot. Based on like how many hours I'm able to work with Hiveworks, which I would call it, in the industry we call it a retainer, where like someone is paying you more consistently and you will stay around because you're going to get a consistent paycheck with them. And then also outside freelance work.
Okay. How about you, Kel? Especially since the editorial, like that's a big, I mean, books is a big industry.
I mean,
but...
I've never edited for not comics, so I don't know what editors outside of comics get paid compared to comics.
I mean, I gotta assume occasionally you go and look at a listing just to see.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm dyslexic and I'm bad at reading prose, so I would never apply for one of those.
Not even in your
so I don't know how editorial for comics versus non-comics compares.
Okay. I know magazine editorial, depending on where you are, it can be a big number, but like 6-digit.
Okay.
But also that's you have to work with a lot of text, and it's not comics, so
yeah, I don't care about not comics.
Comics are the only thing that matters.
Yeah, I'm the worst person to ask this question for, because between 2005 and 2000 19, I did only comics. And lived off my comics. And then COVID happened, and most of my money was from convention sales. So I briefly worked at H&R Block, which is awful. And don't go to them. They're overcharging everybody.
They are. They really are.
And that was like work 80 hours a week during tax season.
Hell.
Well, people are mad at you because taxes exist.
It's not your fault.
It's not your fault.
So then I got hired as an editor at Seven Seas, and that's unionized, so it's great. I make more than what Kevin said that he makes in his best year. So shrug, I don't know.
I can see why you stick with it then.
Yeah.
Huh. And then Hye.
So before I was able to do, I used to have it in my blurb where it would be like, server by day and typesetter by night. That was definitely a job that would sustain me so I could come back and do smaller freelance jobs. I just worked as, server, doing the old, day job grind, and then coming home to do artwork at night, depending on whatever client it was. I discussed this in a previous panel, how to print a comic. But the amount of work per book does fluctuate depending on what both the artist wants, and we diagnose what they might need. For instance, I've learned over the years to have a process of what I call, page diagnosing, which is basically I ask the client for, okay, so you say you need this, you know that this exists a part of the book process making. Give me 10 of your pages. I will charge you a flat fee just to see how much work goes into it. And from there, I will base my rate off of how much work I see needs to go into it, how much you would like me to do, or you realize, oh, well, if I need to do that, I can do that myself.
Yeah.
It's that sort of dialogue, again, working with an artist for that. So
Mm-hmm.
I would use my day job, which, server downtown Seattle. It I will say,
I remember those days.
It did make me, it brought in my money.
I remember the free tater tot days. Those were pretty good.
Oh yeah, good old crab tater tots down
Little
by
crab tater tots. Those are so good.
God, right? Sad I never got the recipe for those. But yeah, so did that, and then again, as Kel mentioned, COVID happened, and as I kind of did a very, trial run back into the restaurant industry, at that point, I had been sustaining myself off of like freelance projects and everything, so much so that I was initially let go because I had to take off time to work on stuff. But at the end, it did kind of work because I was able to then acquire a salary job for my primary client, that is Iron Circus right now. So
yeah, you kind of got that rare chance to between things where everything was like a huge mess, and you were able to take that time to slide into doing that, which isn't unusual these days. I'm finding to hear more people talking about that, like 2020, 2021, taking that time to be like, okay, I'm gonna work on something, and then like as things start opening up again, I can change my career.
You have that incubation point, and then from there, and it's always, no matter who you are, it's always a hard, like, initial, like, trusting yourself to not only be able to do the work, but then also that you're going to be able to maintain that work as well. It was a little touch and go there when I initially was signed on, just because I was like, covering for other, like, finishing previous projects that had been on the roll, but I finally really got to start leaving my substantial impact on books in the beginning of 2023, middle or so. And every day I'm very thankful for that chance. So I would say, in terms of balancing out how much I'm making with what I do now in my salary, a little under what if I would be doing full serving full time, but it's able, like, if I do have time with my current salary job, I'm able to be like, okay, I can take this smaller job on the side, so I can sustain myself while doing this. So it's very much a game of balancing, how much work do I know that these current books that I'm salaried for are going to take time, versus how much am I able to feasibly also take on, and like what are prior engagements if we need to stop on something and then restart it again. So
interesting. Huh. A lot of balancing.
Very much so.
Like for what you get in freedom, being able to, because you've been doing some remote nomad traveling kind of business recently, but you also have to balance things real carefully and make sure things don't fall over workload wise, and also financially. Which can be its own stressor, instead of just having, a boss who pays you.
And especially after 2025 has started off to such a
wild way.
Really.
So out of curiosity, for all three of you, how have your careers kind of changed your relationship with just like comics as a medium? Because we all love comics. When you, for example, Hye, when you go and you read something, do you have to stop yourself from being like, oh, this is the incorrect paper type for this?
I know why you're asking this question, but I find it's very funny you do anyway, because you know exactly what I do when I open up a book. I get there.
It's exactly that, yes.
Open up a loop and be like, let me look at this paper stuff here. And I will be the first to admit, because it is my job. So that's something that I am curious about, and it's something that I look for, especially in books. I always say, like, your favorite book could be also your favorite reference piece. And it's important, and sometimes leaves more of an impact, or makes you question like how was a book put together. Makes you, it could make you even privy to something that you could improve upon your own books for future use, or even your own artistic process.
Or it could ruin a book that you previously really liked, and now you can't stop seeing the mistakes in it.
Yeah, or
one of those things where it's like how much of your relationship with something you love do you sacrifice to also be able to work to make that thing better, you know?
Well, that's that. And then also, the realities of like whatever factors could work with you. For example, like printing budget, like what is somebody feasibly able to do on a book without breaking a bank, or if they have to work within a budget for that. It's like sometimes you might not be able to afford that big fancy stock that it can absorb all of those really, really rich colors that you have. And it's like, is that in my court to communicate to the artist? It's like, well, I can't do this, but I can offer you, this type of paper instead. Or is that something that the artist themselves is willing to acquiesce on? So it's again, negotiation process with both with the artist and the printer at times.
How about you, Kel? Can you tell when something is badly edited?
Well,
or
here's
are
the
there
thing
things that make you
is,
like love something more because you can tell that like
here's
there's
the
extra
thing
hands?
is, sometimes it's a good editor, sometimes it's just a good artist. So that's why it's hard to tell if something is well edited or not. Is because some artists don't need that much editing. Whereas the I've always being an editor, I've always been kind of nitpicky and critical and like to pick apart stories to begin with. So I still read stuff kind of the same way. I recently started reading Black Butler because a streamer that I like is really into it and made a video about it. And
Really?
and I read it and I was in their Discord and I was like, while reading this immediately was like, is this author's first work? The answer is they did a one shot right before, but it is very close to their first work. And then had to explain to said Discord, when I say the storytelling is bad, I do not mean the writing is bad. I mean what is going on in this panel.
That's kind of an interesting downside to the way the manga industry works, which is something I could do an entire panel on, but just the people being snapped up after that first one shot, and it's like, okay, this was a hit, but this person may need more practice.
So it's kind of I always had that critical eye, though. I think I would be that nitpicky even if I wasn't an editor. That's partly why I am well suited to being an editor is because it's like I'm not being mean about it. I'm being like, what is going on in this panel? I'm not being like, this is trash. Get rid of it.
And then Kevin, same question. When you read through like a webcomic, can you tell you're like, ooh, I would have done this differently? Does it distract you?
Well, I mean, on the design end, I can tell like certain kinds of like design decisions that they're making that I think could be interesting because there's something different between what I'm hearing from Kel and Hye is that like the thing existing isn't existing or not, it isn't the criteria. We're like, if they continue to engage in it, if the story is obviously meant to go on longer and it stops, the technology can sometimes be a part of that. It can sometimes be another factor that makes it more annoying for you to update your stuff. I don't have a thing where I mean, if you want me to grouse, I can. Like if people are watching this, don't use Comic Press, please. Don't use Comic Press. Like WordPress with Comic Press, that plugin has been abandoned for like my entire career. Two Chickies, fine, use that. There's webcomic that also works. But like when I see people using different kinds of technology, I usually, because I don't know them, I don't know if
Mhm.
it's a good choice or not. So I don't really have a like, ooh, don't do that. Beyond
Mhm.
Comic Press, which has been abandoned. Like that's a
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Which for those who maybe are newer to like the web spaces, from what I understand, the easiest way to explain it is Comic Press relies on a type of software that is very outdated, and you cannot
yes.
update that without breaking Comic Press.
Yes.
But that
Yes.
software is very important for your website security. So what you're getting in this management system that you might like could really compromise your website for people who are maybe looking to attack your website later on.
Yes.
Like
And
smashing
like,
the glass wall for the fire, or like a candy bar instead of a vending machine. I mean, it's like you got the
Yeah.
bar, but you know everybody can see that you're
Yeah, no,
ow.
yeah.
totally,
And it's
totally.
very easy to see what a website is made with if you have the right tools. Like it's very easy to tell.
Yeah.
So you're kind of exposing yourself a little bit there.
Totally, totally. And like if you have issues, if something needs to happen there, like you're not going to be able to get support even from the developer who's abandoned
Yeah.
it for a long time, or like other people who might not be using it or whatever.
Yeah.
Like there's like different kinds of risks that come up when you use it.
Yeah.
Um, but like in general, when it comes to looking at other people's sites, I often find it interesting to see like, oh, what did they use to do this? When I see people using different stuff beyond like what I'm used to seeing, that could be
Yeah.
interesting. Um, but not always.
Yeah. Okay. Huh. Interesting. So do all three of you um do you have advice you would give to your previous selves, like when you started this, that you think would still be relevant now, or do you think each of your fields have progressed, not necessarily changed, but like progressed enough to where things wouldn't be what you would tell yourself wouldn't be relevant anymore? And we can start with Kel, since I know editorial hasn't quite changed as much as other things may have.
The
And then
advice
after
that
that
I
we can do a little bit of question and answer.
advice that I'd given myself. I probably couldn't give past me advice
Hmm.
because editorial wasn't the goal.
Yeah.
Making comics was.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
um, editorial became the goal when I needed money.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, that wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
So,
It is
um,
interesting to hear that you like went into it for the money, especially in like comics where the narrative is so often that like comics is terrible. I'm gonna go to video games. And it's like, no, you can stay in comics.
Yeah.
oh,
The money there is money. Maybe it's not, like hundreds of thousands of dollars every year, but
mhm.
like it's
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 not being the
there.
ultimate mangaka of your dreams. Like, sort of
Yeah.
like I'm gonna go off to be a rich cartoonist. It's like sometimes it's not how that happens.
Sometimes it's not how parts of the industry work just because of like where you are or the particular like genres that you work in, or just like there's a lot of factors, even like just where you are in history.
Yeah.
Yeah,
uh
like if you can put up with reading stuff that isn't really your thing, but still judge it accurately,
yeah.
um, that's sure, go for it
Yeah.
in editorial. Uh, because I read a lot of manga that's not my thing at Seven Seas.
Yeah. How about you, Hi?
Uh, get that diagnosis fee earlier and you do it for everybody because when I
Do it
was
for
hygiene,
everyone.
I do it for everybody. 2016. You put that thing in your contract right now to see just how much work will go. Because there have been multiple projects where I just was not aware of it. Like, people tell you that, again,
Mm.
earlier discussion of people know what they need right off the bat for their comic done,
Yeah.
and they tell me what the job is, but they do not outline what that all entails. Like, I need
Yeah.
you to help me put these pages together, but that also does not include, like page, like asset rescaling, like, it's like if there's zip tones in there, if those need to be edited in order to fit the pages format and everything.
The time that it takes for them to email you back with a link to their Dropbox, and you've been bugging them for multiple weeks.
Yes.
That's something you should pay yourself for.
Really. So just more or less just know what the scope of the project is that you're going to be getting into, no matter what the book is, or no matter how many. And I mean, if anything, too, because it helps the client and yourself later on. So even the artist is like more informed when it's their next pass at a book. It's like, okay, I know what Hye had to go through, like, put together for the book. So it's either I am able to fortify myself on this now, so it's easier for another person to do their job again in the future, or it's something that I myself, as a pre-press person, know it's like, okay, I had to do, such and such for so and so. And from there, that informs me like what to possibly expect out of either similar comics or like another job from them. So just know what you're getting into with your jobs, and make sure that you have that handy little diagnosis, fee for everybody. And
me sending you colored pages with like 5 different kinds of teal. There you go.
Here we go.
Here we go. How about you, Kevin? I know, like, especially with web, the internet has changed so drastically.
Yeah, I think like it would be tempting to say something that is like timely, to be like, be wary of 2018, or some kind of term or something. But I think what I'd probably end up saying is something more along like what you were saying, Hye, and was like, learn how to ask good questions and work as hard as possible to become a better listener. That it's okay to be rude to the current person you're talking to, the client, to help the future person, like to help them in the future. Not asking a good question will make you kick yourself and cost them time and money. Like you will end up building something for them that they don't care about, like they ultimately don't care about, because you can get caught in this trap where sometimes you'll ask, do you want this? And what they'll hear is kind of like, if you were to ask someone like on New Year's Eve, are you going to work out next year? Like, and there's no real way they're going to say no. Like some people are completely fine being like, fuck no, and like eat a donut as they tell you. But like a lot of people want aspirationally to like improve themselves or do something different.
It also might be like, do you want these extras in your car? Like when you're car shopping, do you want seat warmers? Do you want and it's like, they maybe don't care about seat warmers, but sure, why not? Like,
yeah. So there's a lot of those kinds of questions that I would ask people that would put people on a spot when they had no way of knowing, versus like coming back to them later and going like, hey, now do you want this, now that you're used to this thing? And I guess the last thing I can think of is like, come up with an intake process ASAP. Like, that means I, after a while, developed for Hiveworks a like a form that people would go through when we would start building a website for them and stuff. And that was a way to like shake the tree a lot to get all of their answers out of them as quickly as possible, and try to get them in a mindset of answering a bunch of questions. And a lot of times I was able to get like oh, you don't need this. Like, I thought you might need this starting up, but you don't actually need it. So we'll skip that and that'll save you a bunch of time. And that is like something I wish that I had started at the beginning with.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Interesting. Yeah. So what I'm kind of hearing from like all 3 of you is essentially like, figure out if you are going to, like, what your priority is. Like, can you do things where you are making money and still be in the industry you love, such as editorial? Can you make sure that you're kind of taking yourself seriously from the beginning and charging a diagnostic fee? And can you make sure you're organized from the very beginning? Like, no matter where you're going, these will still be things that are important to consider.
Yeah, and they're living systems. You don't have to have like you're not like honing a blade at the very beginning and then never changing it. Like, you can update, you set up a Google form with a bunch of questions, then you can change those questions after one client.
Oh, and answer your emails, but that's my advice.
Yes.
Yeah, no, everyone answer your emails.
Answer your emails.
Get into the habit of that early.
When I give an estimate for a website, I tend to overestimate because I want to give them like the full range. I want to give them the floor and the ceiling. And some people's eyes will pop out when I'm like, oh, it'll take 3 months to make a one-page website. And they're like, what? And what I'm doing is calculating in the amount of time you're not going to respond to me with a one sentence thing that I need to know in order to like do like a lot of work.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Because people are busy. I get it.
And it's one of those things that's kind of like when you work in web comics, a lot of people don't take into the fact that, oh, you need to scan pages, you need to upload them, you need to do promotion, this and that. You still need to do that,
Yes.
even if you aren't, even if like making like a comic isn't your specific career focus anymore. Like there's still extra things that you need to do, and you need to account for those. It's just what do you love? What can you put up with? What are you fine with doing? What do you discover that you actually do love doing? And then yeah, no, that's ooh, it's good stuff. We have a little bit of time left for Q&A. I'll give us like about like 5 minutes if people have questions, since we went over a little bit, since there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
Go on.
I did see a question from Lauren in the chat, but I'm not sure if that's something Kel can answer quickly. That's more for like an editorial.
Okay.
I think.
So when you're editing a comic, how do you approach stylistic choices, especially when you might not immediately be clear to new readers? For example, some panels might look confusing or ambiguous at first glance, but for longtime fans, those are familiar with the art style, the intent is obvious. So I almost never give feedback based on style. I just, is this action clear? So when I say something is unclear what is going on in this panel, the one that I used in the example of Black Butler was, it was really zoomed in to 3 people's faces, and then the speech balloon was covering half of their faces, so you literally couldn't see most things. So a lot of the times when I say this isn't clear, it usually means that it needs to just be drawn at a different angle, or the person needs to not crop so close, or they need to pull out, or they need to make the panel bigger so there's room for the speech bubble. So when I say like something's unclear, it is almost never because of the style. It is almost because you crop too close, or the balloon is covering the action. If that makes sense.
No, that does. That's one of those things that's important to keep in mind for if you want to get into editorial, is like making sure you have that eye for what works in comics.
Yeah.
And then there's 2 questions from Apricot, which I think would actually be good for Hye and Kevin respectively. For Hye, I think this would be a good one. Are these non-art comic jobs something any of you feel needs a formal education behind it, or is your portfolio the most important part of finding work in these areas? And if that's the case, how do you recommend showcasing things like editorial work that someone won't have all the time in the world to view? Actually, yeah, go for it, all 3 of you. Also, Hye, you're muted. Got him.
I'm gonna say that a BFA is probably important if you want to get an editorial job that's a salaried position. They're probably not going to hire someone who doesn't have some sort of English degree, or in my case, a degree in comics. So for editorial, it was mostly resume based. Like, I don't think that they read the things that I edited. It was based on a recommendation, and then I edited these books, which came out these years, and they can check that those books exist and that I am not a liar. But yeah.
Interesting.
I will jump in and say on my part, because I'm currently with a team that doesn't have a lot of like technical expertise, so it's hard for them to evaluate like how good I am or bad I am. That like from my understanding of formal education, what it helps you do is be more broad, so that you can like you can jump from one thing to another versus be like highly specialized. Because typically when you are self-taught, you will teach yourself in a particular way. So like you might not know that it's actually really convenient if you do CSS in this particular way. So but you can accomplish that by just doing like online courses and stuff. Or like I refreshed myself by using Tree Frog, the like online learning platform, and that I started from 0 to all the way up, and I I like doing that often. I'll like going back to see like what is CSS 101 because it's so different now that you can usually pick up like a tip or two.
Mhm.
But I don't know if it's always required because it is more portfolio based when it comes to like agency style website stuff from my understanding at this stage.
I can say that in my end of things, when I got my salary position at the legal administration firm, I showed them a couple of websites I had made, and then I acted like I knew a lot more than I actually did, and I could have learned things later on.
Yeah.
So that's web is something that I think you can have some flexibility with.
I'm gonna add to mine. There's
Oh yeah.
currently the Viz job editorial listing, so I just pulled up what their requirements are, and it does say bachelor's degree in English journalism, creative writing, comparative literature, communications, or related field or equivalent experience. So
It makes sense as
you you
a formalized thing.
Yeah.
yeah. So for salaried editorial positions, you do probably need a bachelor's degree.
Yeah. And then Hi, how do you feel about the formal education question? Because you went to college for this
A
to
little
some
bit,
degree,
yeah.
a little bit.
About 2.5, 3 semesters of it,
Yeah.
and more or less that was a very good position of people kind of like steering you out of that greater funnel into
Yeah.
figuring out what you want to do from there. Everybody's art school, like what the biggest thing to know in terms of art school is like what do you want to get out of it, and that is
Yeah.
you like never think that like purely for the arts that a degree is required unless it's something like
Yeah.
to do with editorial or a something like web development where you do need to have like basic learning blocks instilled in you.
Mhm.
For mine, I have seen like listings with like larger corporations that do require some sort of degree in either graphic design or some other communications aspect. My best thing that I took out of school was again just it helped direct me into what I wanted to do, and I kind of went to art school at a very unique time in a very unique place in the end of 2012, beginning of 2013 in San Francisco
Uh-oh. Did
when
we lose him?
oh, hello.
Oh,
No,
there
I
you are.
can
Oh,
hear
I can
him.
hear Hi.
Oh, okay.
Oh, hi. Mysterious.
Yeah, go ahead.
Um
Keep going, High.
yeah, where it was a very like critical time of like, that techie bubble kind of like that startup mindset over sweeping everybody where it's like, well, we don't need to hire a lot of people. If we get 2 or 3 people to do a whole bunch of tasks, that's great, right? And it's like that's not for any faith in your skill. And if it
Yeah.
is, it's because they don't want to hire other people to do other branching jobs. So
Okay.
if you are able to like again consider art school if you want like a more formalized direction and like where you want to pursue your arts and such, and there will undeniably be jobs that just right out of the gate entrance fee of having a degree, but
I never went to college, so all of this is
yeah,
like wild to me. I don't have a degree. I graduated high school and started drawing comics.
yeah,
And then, oh, what's up?
No, I'm gonna add on to what you're gonna say.
Oh, okay, yeah. Let's actually, if we could just real
Totally.
quick answer the question about pricing, and then
yep.
we can wrap up since there's another panel in 40 minutes.
Absolutely.
Uh,
So I can answer pricing. So on
yeah.
pricing, I would say the thing that will help you the most, in my opinion, is tracking your usual expenses of like month to month, and then also use something like Toggle, Toggl, or another kind of time tracker, and track literally everything you can if you're
Yeah.
okay with it. Even if you just do it for a chunk of time, like 3 months, you can use that as a basis for like what is my normal, and that will let you know like what is the minimum amount you can charge before you start like really eating into your own savings. And with that, because I recently did this with Black Candle because it's a thing that I'm working on, is once you know that number, you don't need to tell anyone that number. Like you can add on top of that number. And a lot of advice that I hear is that you should double that number. So if you have 25, based on the amount of time you need to work and stuff like that, the hours that you're available to work, all that stuff.
Yeah.
If it needs to be 25 an hour, you could charge 50, because the wisdom I heard was that you're probably not going to be able to charge for literally every hour, but it's up to you. And once you know that baseline, that 25 number, to use that as an example, you can make decisions on, is it worth it to go from 35 to 25 because I'm getting something else from this? Like it's a really good opportunity. Or like, hi, you were saying that like, what if this is a smaller job that will like feed my soul? Can you afford that without hurting yourself?
Yes.
I tend to work from there and look back on information I have and experience I've had in terms of like, how long did this job take, things like that. The more you do these things, the more you get a sense of like what is a normal range,
Right.
and then that makes it easier for you to price. But the practical answer is to like figure out what their budget is and shake them as hard as possible to get them to tell you their budget, and then try to work from there.
And it varies too, you know, depending if you're like quoting for a company or a corporation that you know can afford it versus somebody independent who is like doing the best they can with their budget. Like obviously don't undercharge yourself to a point where you're doing free labor for them, but be willing to, you know, negotiate in good faith as long as the other person is especially.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds perfect.
I hired some freelance editors in the past, so I just charged what they charged. And then as far as Seven Seas salary, like I said, it's unionized, so they yelled at Seven Seas to give us all a certain minimum, and also put in that Seven Seas is required to give us a raise every year. So yay unions.
Seven Seas, huh?
Yeah.
Thank you all for, it's probably time to wrap up since we're a bit over, but thank you all for answering everyone's questions, including mine. Learning things is good, and we've learned things today.
Yeah, I'm happy for any questions. If you want to email me, I'll answer them.
Yeah, I grabbed everyone's emails and websites and I put them up on this last slide just in case, because I had an inkling in my mind. I was like, if we go over, we're probably gonna run out of time.
Yep.
Yeah, please, by all means. I love to answer questions.
Yeah, I love to answer questions too.
Yeah, thank you all for coming. This was a good panel.
Yeah, thank you very much. All y'all have a wonderful rest of your afternoon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Waving for YouTube.